Welcome back. On this program, we've been speaking quite a bit about the death of Eric Garner and the disciplinary hearing recently for Daniel Pantaleo, he, the arresting officer, the day that Garner died. But that's not the only big story in the news involving the police in the city. After several cop killers were recently paroled, officers, well, they're livid. Our own Dominic Carter, he spoke with a man in the middle of both these stories, the president of the Police Benevolent Association, Pat Lynch.
Well, good evening to you, Richard. And as you might expect, Pat Lynch had a lot to say about both the Garner case and how cop killers should be handled by the criminal justice system.
Instead, he resisted arrest. The police officer did not use a chokehold.
With the departmental trial of Officer Daniel Pantaleo continuing, the president of the PBA asserts Officer Pantaleo should not lose his job.
What CCRB, the prosecutor, is doing is taking still photographs of a millisecond in time. Police officers went out there and professionally did their job, and it ended in tragedy. What they did is try to de-escalate the situation, use everything they were trained, tried every conversation basically to say, please, put your hands behind your back and we'll get this arrest done and we'll all move on. But unfortunately, Mr. Gardner chose otherwise.
In the 2014 video, Garner says repeatedly, quote, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." We asked Pat Lynch if he has a message for Garner's mother.
No one ever would want to lessen the fact that her son lost his life that day. That was no one's intention. Who knows why it happened, but it could have gone a different way. But no one can take away the sorrow and the broken heart of a mother, and we don't disrespect that at all.
Ultimately, the police commissioner will decide Pantaleo's fate. A Staten Island grand jury declined to indict him.
If he bases his decision on the evidence that was presented in that courtroom and is fair-minded about it, doesn't look to politics or passion, the verdict will have to be not guilty, because that's what the evidence speaks to. And again, all we ever ask for as police officers is fairness in any process. We thought we got that fairness in the quiet of a grand jury. Others thought otherwise. We thought we got that fairness when the feds looked at it. Others thought otherwise. Those others are political folks. Those others are demonstrators on the streets. Again, a terrible tragedy. We respect other folks' opinions, but everything should be based on just facts.
Thank you to every New Yorker who spoke out against the release of convicted cop killers. With your help, we hand-delivered over 800,000 petitions to the parole board in Albany.
You were livid when a man was paroled for killing a police officer, Mr. Bell. But he did spend 39 years in jail.
Because we ask, how can a parole board just look at the aspect of a perp is good in jail? He has no option or no choice. There's a correction officer on his left and on his right. They have to behave themselves. But then to ignore the fact that he violently planned this killing, killed 2 police officers, and just because he had politics behind him, we're going to say, well, he's rehabilitated. We have a parole board that is absolutely out of control. We had 800,000 petitions from not just police officers, there's not that many of us, but from the citizens on the street say this can't happen. The parole board refused to accept them. We have 2 more cop killers getting out of jail as we speak. All of a sudden, they're all rehabilitated? Or maybe it's this. Maybe they have people teaching them to study. Maybe they're teaching them how to get crocodile tears. Maybe they're teaching them what to say so a sympathetic parole board would let them out. Soon they're going to let them all out, and I'm not being dramatic. Let's come back in a couple of years, Dominic, and have this conversation. I have a sickening feeling that I'm right on this.
All right, a lot to unpack there. Let's first start off with Officer Pantaleo. And I had the attorneys on Wednesday like I normally do. Nobody thinks that this will reopen on both the civil or even the criminal side for Pantaleo. But whether or not he keeps his job is an open question. To me, stuff came out in this proceeding 5 years later as of July since the death, including that lieutenant who said no big deal after his death. The medical examiner saying that the chokehold that was against, by the way, the police handbook, led to, I think, cascaded, as you said, a fatal asthma attack with a pre-existing condition. A lot came out that we didn't know about. Now, there was a settlement that they worked out, a civil settlement, but nonetheless, none of that, he thinks, mitigates what Pantaleo did that day?
Well, the bottom line is the union is Pantaleo's representative, and they're not going to budge, Richard. As a matter of fact, in terms of their strong defense of Pantaleo, and you brought up a lot of good points. I want to try and get to them quickly. So, a top union official, not Pat Lynch, because Commissioner O'Neill is in the hot seat, as we both know. And the union official said this is O'Neill's moment. Either he's going to show he's with the cops, or he's going to show he's going the political route. And so let's just look at the process real quick. You have a deputy commissioner that oversees this trial. It's on the 4th floor of One Police Plaza. Frankly, Richard, I almost threw up myself looking at the autopsy photos of Mr. Garner. They were awful. And his mother left the courtroom right before the photos were showed. And so this has been almost a 5-year process in the making. And so the prosecutor in this case, the CCRB, they said, back to the word cascade, we watched as they questioned the medical examiner that did the actual autopsy. And the medical examiner said that, yes, while there was no external bruising, that there was plenty of bleeding inside Mr. Garner's neck. They pulled back like 4 layers of skin. And so she said that it led to a cascade of events that caused the fatal asthma attack.
And it's just been dragged out now through the appeal process and everything else.
Even in the disciplinary trial has been dragged out, Richard.
Yep.
I just want to make sure I get that in. It's not resuming until June 5th. So it's another week and a half, and the reason being because Stuart London, the attorney for Mr. Pantaleo, he wants to put on a medical examiner to directly rebut, if you will, the findings of the medical examiner.
And again, this was over allegedly selling loose cigarettes. All right, now let's get to the police, and with a ton of signatures that they flooded Albany with. I get the argument. I've had debates. People say, wait a second, if it was one of our loved ones that was killed by somebody else, should that killer be treated differently than if someone killed a law enforcement officer? Extract the personal investment you and I would have as a loved one. I can make an argument that yes, and I know not everyone's going to agree with me on this because they're a symbol of law and order. That said, though, Judith Clark was the one that was in the news. She drove the car. She didn't pull the trigger. But police were livid about that. How do you feel about that? Because I get where Lynch is coming from, but to go where he's going is you do your crime, you do your time, but you should be treated differently because you killed a person in blue rather than a regular citizen.
The police union will never accept, I'm going to get to my opinion in 1 second, the police union will never accept these individuals that, frankly, in some horrific situations have killed police officers. My personal opinion is sort of along the parole board. Once they feel, and only once the board feels that you should be released, that you've paid your debt to society, you should be released.
Real quickly, I want to play a clip, again going back to your interview with Pat Lynch and what he thought of the city's mayor, Mr. de Blasio, and his presidential bid.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio running for president. You have been quoted as saying, Mr. President, that it's laughable. Why do you say that?
It's laughable because he's not doing the job that he ran for twice. He's refusing to manage the city, and we've proved that past administrations, this city can be managed. He's refusing to do the job he has. It's as if he likes campaigning better than the job. I understand. You're out in the street, you're talking to folks that support you, you're having a good time. But once in a while, you got to get up and go to work.
Not a major surprise he's not a fan of de Blasio. And a lot of times the PBA and the mayor fight, but this one seems really personal here.
It is personal, Richard. Your assessment is correct. In fairness to de Blasio, the PBA has not had a contract in 2 years, I believe, and so they are livid. And they are literally following this man all around, protesting against him.
They will not be, I don't think Mr. de Blasio should wait by the phone waiting for the endorsement from the PBA. Dominic, as always, great job. All right, when we come back, everyone, climate change is a hoax. Vaccines, they're harmful for you. Those just a couple of the junk science theories that are frequently out there in the news. After the break, I'm going to speak with an author in a fascinating book, debunks all of those theories and more. We'll get into that after this.